So I did not tell her, but I found a condominium in Parañaje. As a foreigner, I cannot own land. I cannot legally own property in the Philippines.
Absolutely.
I can or own a condominium because the condominium, you don't own the land. Row housing. So we found there's lots of options out there for row housing, and there's all kinds of developers. And the one Jen wanted, or she really liked, it was one of the first ones I went with her to see. And I liked the whole layout of their little development. But my gosh, you talk about tiny, 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 tiny house. Um, it was tiny, and I knew that it was going to be her and Genesis and her sister's baby, her brother June, and Mama, all in that, and then me when I come, all in that little tiny house. So my goal was trying to find the most home for the money we could. And so we kept looking, and we stumbled across a development called Bella Dia, and it's part of the San Miguel properties. San Miguel's a beer company, but they're in lots of different things. They build toll roads, and they built the Skyway, and they're building some of these trains and things that are infrastructure type stuff. They also have housing developments. Anyway, we ended up buying a row house in Belaldia, which is in General Trias, Cavite. Yes, not too far from Das Marinas, if anybody knows where that is. Um, and of course, I was in Texas when all this was going on, but we got them packed up there in Cuyapo, and they were just renting a house, and got them moved in. Jen's commute was so much easier, and she got so much more time. She was super grateful for having to be able to have the time with her son and her family. So that right there was worth it. Fast forward to me retiring, us getting married, me relocating to the Philippines, and now Ricky Baker's in the house. And Ricky Baker is from the great state of Texas, and we call it that because everything's wonderful and big, and we have lots of room. And I am used to having lots of room. And all of a sudden, at the age of, let's see, how old was I then? 57. I'm living in a 2 bedroom, 2 bath row house, which for a row house was actually quite spacious. Here's what you don't have: you don't have a front yard, you don't have a backyard, you don't have a yard. Um, I had added the front little area they had, which was supposed to be for parking your tricycle. I turned it into a covered patio, which actually was kind of nice because they could go out during rainy season and sit out underneath that. It could actually get out of the house. Um, but bottom line is, you hear everything in everybody else's home. You have to picture this: our little street, Casuarina Street, and there's a bunch of streets, and our little street probably had 80 homes on it, 40, about 40 on each side. I'm guessing. I could be over doing that, but that's what it seemed like to me. Um, and about every other one, every night, somebody's, or every day, night, doesn't matter, night, day, doesn't matter. Karaoke, and they love for everybody to hear their karaoke. It's not a matter of I'm going to respect my neighbor and just sing quietly in my living room. It's let me crank this up, and gosh, everybody's going to enjoy it. And you're hearing, at any given moment, you're hearing 7 or 8 of those at the same time. Crying babies, barking dogs. They don't have a yard, remember, but they have dogs. But the dogs aren't in the house; they are in a cage or on a chain out in front of their little area. And so every dog's barking at every person that walks down the street or every tricycle that drives down the street. it was a nightmare for me. I did not sleep. And I had been there about a month. By the way, we bought this house for, I think it's like 1.5 million pesos. So that's about 30,000 US dollars. That's not bad for a house.
Right, right.
Again, I couldn't own it. It had to be in Jen's name because the property was a part of the purchase. Had the property not been owned by the house just be sitting on it for like a long-term lease type of thing, then it could have been in my name. I can own the property. I mean, I can own the structure. I can't own the property it sits on. So that had to be in Jen's name. And so it wasn't expensive, and we made it nice. We had somebody come in and build us a nice kitchen, cabinets, and I bought a refrigerator and a stove, and we turned a little outside the back area. There's a little covered area in the back, maybe 6 by 6 feet. We turned that into a laundry area, and of course built the little patio outside. All of those things were done by family members who did not charge us a lot of money. But again, it just came down to I wasn't comfortable, and I couldn't see myself honestly living there the rest of my days on earth. So we went to Bataan, to Balanga City, and we kind of liked Balanga City in Bataan. It was a really pretty place. So we decided to see if we could find a little rental house there, and we found one. And literally within a matter of days, on the day of the lockdown, it was going to be at 12 midnight on a Sunday. That morning, we started loading a truck, and by 11 p.m., we were leaving Metro Manila. So we got to Balanga, to Bataan, to the border of Bataan, and they weren't going to let us in. And this is like 1 in the morning, 1, 2 in the morning, I guess, maybe later. And I just, I almost lost it. And I said, I got my entire house in that truck that's behind us. We're in our SUV. I said, this is my family. We can't go back into Manila. What are we supposed to do? I mean, I literally lost it. And of course, sure, the cool thing about that is it makes the Filipinos a little nervous. And even though they have automatic weapons, they would rather just not talk to you. So they just said, go, sir, go. And I'm quite used to that now. And so we went. And we got moved in, and we stayed in Balanga for about 1.5 years. And that's actually where we started looking for property. I know we're just now getting to the property side of things, but that's where
What year were you in? What years were you in Balanga?
Let's see, I got to Cavite in February of 21. And by the end of March, we were in Balanga City of 21.
I was in Balanga in 2018, a couple different times in Balanga, Bataan. I spent some time there, but that was back in 18.
Yeah, and at that point, Jen and I had traveled to a lot of places. Well, nowhere near every place by any means, but what I like, because I'm a big beauty guy. I want scenery. I want a view, and I'm willing to, do what I need to do to get that view. And we also kind of like the fact that there was a lot. We ended up renting about 50 meters from the market, which sounds really convenient, doesn't it? And it was. Anything Jen needed, I mean, she didn't have to stock up. She just walked down to the market, get fresh mangoes and fish and whatever, pork, come back, make dinner. Very convenient. But so we kind of both decided we kind of liked Balanga, and that this would be a nice place. So we started looking. And here's, I could go in through each individual piece of a property. First one was a CLOA nightmare. I learned what CLOA was. There are, a few different types of titles in the Philippines. One of those is called CLOA. I don't know exactly what the acronym is, but my understanding and what was explained to me was that many years ago, the government, in an effort to make amends with the native people, here in the Philippine Islands, kind of like reparations, I guess you could say. Um, they tracted large quantities of land, mostly mountaintop, not being used, jungle type settings to uh, to the people, to the native peoples. And
Absolutely.
some of these tracts were several hundred hectares.
Mhm.
And if those of you that don't know what a hectare is, it's pretty damn big. It's a big piece of property, and you throw 200 of those suckers together, you got a little state, a little county on your hands. But the very first piece of property we looked at was up in the mountains, just above Bologna City, and we found a piece of property, Roy, that almost too good to be true. But the view, my view was there. I had mountains behind me. I had Manila Bay as far as you could see, and at nighttime, Manila was just lit up. It's on the other side of the bay. The view was just incredible, and the air was cooler. We were up at an elevator, about halfway up the mountain, good elevation, good air. Not quite as Bologna, being down on Manila Bay, it's kind of miserable. After living there for a year and a half, I realized the weather was not, and they have a hell of a rainy season. Oh my God.
If you go up by the memorial,
Uh-huh.
if you go up the memorial, it's a totally different environment up on that
Correct.
mountain.
Correct. Any elevation, if you can get
Yep.
up, and that's what we were looking for. I didn't want to be in Bologna City. We talked about that. As much as we like being able to walk to cafes and things, I'm like, baby, if we need to experience that, we'll just drive down, park the car, and we'll go walk. But otherwise, I don't really want to live in it. Even though we did look at some properties eventually in town or around town, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But so we found this property. It was huge, 5,000 square meters, incredible view. The water is mountain spring water. They actually bring it in from the mountain in these big rubber hoses, and then everybody just ties into it, and it's super clean. Um, there was power. There's a little barangay, so I would have had to run power out maybe about 150 meters, I guess. But I was planning on doing solar anyway. Um, so we got excited about it, and this turned out to be a part of um, a large, like I said, it was a large trip. It wasn't already surveyed, even though the guy kind of said this is where the boundaries are. Wasn't actually surveyed. So we paid to have a little survey to make sure we knew exactly where our boundaries were, and we decided to go down and check because we had an attorney that was working with on the developer, the condo developer case. I was telling him we were looking at property, and he said, Rick, whatever you do, before you do anything, he said, involve me. He said, but if you don't want to involve me, he said, that's okay. Just at least go to the whatever the office name is, I can't remember, and ask for a true certified copy of the title, and make sure that the people that are selling it are actually on the title. Apparently, that's a thing here. And so we did. We went down and got the title. Well, guess what? That title, which was a CLOA title, which the barangay captain, who was selling the property, failed to mention, any details about anything other than it was titled. And we got to looking at the title. There were 999, I'm not making that up, people on this title. So basically, it's kind of like a whole tribe of indigenous folks were on this huge 200-hectare piece of property. And we were wanting to buy 5,000 square meters of it. When I told my attorney that, he said, Rick, I don't want to discourage you. He said, but I can almost 100% tell you you're never going to see title to that property. And then he started explaining why, what has to happen. And at that point, he said, it's not going to stop you from building. I mean, they'll let you build on it. just be aware that if it doesn't ever really get to your name, then somebody else can take it legally.
Did you know
So
that if you build on a CLOA property, and of course that's deemed as agricultural land to begin with, do you know that if you built a home in the middle of CLOA, and you're the foreigner, okay, it's great, I got this new home, they could literally graze animals on your land because it's really not your land.
in this case, what it was explained to me by the attorney is that there's an amount of time that has to pass. And once that amount of time has passed, I think it's like a decade, I don't know exactly, then they can legally sell the property
Correct.
to anyone for whatever use. If it's not within that 10-year period, however, you're right. They have access to it.
Oh yeah.
And anything you do on it is just by their grace of allowing you to do it.
And I don't know what DOC is, but if you read in the CLOA, it says even after the 10-year period where they can sell the land, the land sale has to be approved by DOC.
Yes.
So it gets really convoluted.
And that's a process. It can happen. It can be done. You have to do it right, but it's a very lengthy process, and oftentimes involves bribes and fixers and all kinds of things that just typically don't go well with foreigners. Don't go well with me anyway. So bottom line is, on this piece of property, as much as I wanted to build me a home there, I looked at the captain. I said, it's just too much, too risky, too much. And their attitude changes almost immediately. They went from being my best friend to being my almost like an enemy. My wife was concerned about our safety at that point. So
I was told point blank by my wife's aunt that if anything was CLOA, just stay away. It's never going to happen.
And that's good advice. And I would think it would come down to me, from what I could gather from how it all works, how many people are on the title.
Yes.
Are they still alive? Is it still in first person, or is it now family members involved of that person that's on the title? So yeah, and that's why you go get that certified true copy, because it shows you, because the paperwork the captain gave us, it didn't indicate all of that. And
right.
So once we did that, and of course they count on you not having any good advice and being the foreigner and being the ignorant one, and not following, not asking for help or assistance, and just letting your emotions take over, and oh God, I want to have that piece of property, and that's exactly what they're counting on, and that's why sometimes they can sell these properties 2 and 3 times, and they do. And matter of fact, my attorney and I had some pretty in-depth conversations at that point, and he was very clear. He said the number one crime in the Philippines is property fraud. He said it's everywhere. He said, and there's nothing happening to these people. They just, if they start to catch some heat, they just disappear. They don't ever suffer any consequences. They've got the money in their pocket. And we ran into that over and over and over again in Balanga. Here's what was going on in Balanga, and this is another thing I was struggling with. You would go to look at a piece of property, and in the U.S., it's all about location, right? And what's around you, and how nice is the area, and all those things matter and factor into the value of a property. That's not the case in the Philippines. You could have a pig farm right next to your property you're looking at. And by God, if the people think it's going to be a tourist destination in 10 years, I can't tell you how many times I heard that statement. Oh, well, it's going to be a tourist destination in 10 years. That's 10 years. A lot can happen in 10 years. You can't value your property based on what might happen 10 years from now. The bridge from Cavite over to here, well, that bridge isn't built, hadn't even started. So, that's what you ran into. There was no rhyme or reason for what people were asking for the property. I heard one guy tell me, "Oh, well, there's water down the road." Okay, well, I can drill a well. You don't add 1.5 million pesos on the cost of this little piece of property because there's water down. That's the kind of stuff it really kind of it dumbfounds you.
I asked the realtor if they had any comparables.
There's
And
no
she said,
MLS, no
he said,
MLS.
huh? She said, huh? She had no idea what comparables were.
Yeah, no, there's nothing to compare it to.
It's the Wild West, Rick.
It's correct, and guys, that's real important. What Roy just said there. You know, we're so used to the U.S. to going on MLS and being able to look at the last 10 properties that were sold in that neighborhood within the last 2 years, and look at square footage and look and get a per square foot cost of what it should sell for, and then and you kind of go into any negotiation with some type of foundation under you. Here, you don't. It is whatever they want to ask, and just be advised that can change based on the color of your skin. And I know that's hard for people to realize, but it's true. As soon as they know there's a foreigner involved in who's looking at that property, and no matter how hard you try for your wife to be the only one involved in that process, it's almost impossible to do because you're a couple and you want to be on the same page. And of course, I have a lot more experience with that type of stuff than she does, and inevitably at some point I got to come into the picture. And I promise you, there were moments when I did that the price doubled right there. No shame, no second thought. Oh, there's a foreigner involved. Well, the price is now this. Yeah, you talk about making your blood pressure go up.
They already knew that I was a foreigner, Rick, so they doubled or tripled the price before I even,
in the areas that you're looking at, I guess we'll find out in the next vlog. A lot of expatriates, and so I would think that they already start super elevated, and most likely if they find out it's a Filipino, the price will come way down. But I don't, I just think you treat everybody the same, and you get a fair price for people, and nothing wrong with making money. I think that's great. I'm all for that, but don't try to just. And for me, it was simple, Roy. It came down to this one thing, and that is, was the land going to be so expensive that when I got done buying it, I wouldn't have money to build a home. And if that was the case, then I was cutting off my nose to spite my face. Right. So it just bottom line came down to that. And as Roy was saying, you don't have some of the comparables that you have in the U.S. Roy, touch on that a little bit, would you, about what happens there versus here?
Yeah, you don't have any comparables, and like here, you can go through MLS and you can pull up the data sheet on the MLS. You can see what fair market value is, what they're being taxed upon, and if it's been sold recently in the last few years, you can see what it's sold for. So you can kind of get an idea of, okay, well, they remodeled the kitchen, they remodeled the bathroom, or they added a garage, or whatever they did, and that way you can kind of justify or not their asking price. And in the Philippines, man, I'm telling you, it's the Wild West.
It is. It absolutely is.
I had the same situation with Rick, where I looked at a property that was absolutely gorgeous, but it was priced so high, it was like, wait a minute, I don't think I'm going to be able to afford to build a home on this property.
Correct. And if that's the case, then you're done. I mean, that property doesn't even get consideration. So a lot of people are shooting their own foot. Is what if I would say. But and I'm just and I looked at lots of properties in Balanga City area, Bataan. We looked at another one out in San Antonio, Bagac, beautiful area. Negotiated, made an offer to buy 4,000-meter lots, and offered a cash price. We shook hands. Month and a half went by, no contract, nothing. Kept contacting and by the way, another thing here, guys, there really are no realtors here. there are people here that want to be involved in that industry, but as far as I know, there's no licensing, no degree, no there's no Remax, there's no Century 21, Caldwell Banker, none of that. These are people that will tell you they're realtors, but they actually have little to no training, and um, you're going to find out very quickly that they're just really not what you're used to as a realtor. So just be aware of that. But we went out with one of these people that was claiming to be a developer or realtor type of thing, and that's who we made the agreement with. Um, After about almost two to 3 months, I finally, after I literally having to harass the person because I had the money ready, we were ready to sign a contract. Um, the person admitted to me that the owner decided not to sell it to us. Felt like he was going to be selling it too cheaply, and just didn't feel like that was information that we needed in a timely manner. So for 3 months, we didn't look for property, thinking we had a piece of property. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. There's really the ethics are just not there. They're not there. So we continued our search, and we looked at lots of different, 300 square meters in a development, 1,000 square meters just outside of town, 2,500 square meters up on the mountaintop, one development out in somewhere out in Bagok. They'd gone and put little flags for what we call mahomes, which are your property markers. They put little flags up, and he had it all nice. And this is a young man from Baguio, and he had a little office set up in town. And boy, they were going to sell it. It was beautiful property. We found the one we would want to build on, and um, incredible view. And of course, it was a lot of things they were going to do. But I had a lot of questions, and I started asking those questions. And some of these questions were based on things I'd already learned at this point as far as buying land in the Philippines. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. When you start to see their nervousness, their hesitation, their lack of being able to provide you with an answer, you need to cut your losses and run. What it turned out, I did a lot of digging on this one. What it turned out to happening was this young man had, quote, bought this property from a nurse in the United States who was a Filipina. He was making payments on this property, but in the meantime, he did a little diagram, did some PowerPoint type marketing, and put his little flags out, and did a lot of advertising, hired a lot of these realtors, which are not really realtors, to meet people out there and walk the property. And kind of exciting, all these plans. They were going to build an access road in. There was no road up into it. It was straight up a hill, and build a community water, and all this stuff was going to happen. But what was really happening was he was making payments on this property to the actual owner. And supposedly, once he paid that off, he then was going to get it totally redone as far as broken up, because there's one huge piece of property he was breaking up into lots. That can take years to do. But supposedly once he paid it off, he was going to put the road in, do the water, and so that's what people were going on, and people were buying these lots fast and giving him a lot of money. But he didn't get mine. Because, and I told him, I said, what you're doing is illegal. I also went as far as to ask him for his license to be able to sell a subdivision. That's what he was doing. He was subdividing and selling a subdivision. And you do have to be licensed in the Philippines to be able to do that. But as my attorney shared with me, almost 99% of these people doing this are not. And it's all a scam. It's all fraud. And all you're going to end up with is having given some money that's probably money you couldn't afford to just hand out to somebody, but you're going to do it, and you're going to think you've got a piece of property. And when it comes push to shove, you ain't going to have squat.
I'll add in a little bit of my experience. It's very similar to yours there. We looked at a property in Leyte, and it was very well orchestrated looking back. Of course, as we drove along and they showed us properties, it was a very, very expensive property next to a foreigner that had a wonderful view and a bunch more. And the price continued to go down until we get to this very large area that's a subdivision. And now the price per square meter is very reasonable. And over the course of looking at this, I was told several times that it had a 6.5 meter roadway coming through. They had a map of the subdivision on the phone, which they sent to me. And the first red flag was when she had said, you can cut anywhere you'd like, no matter what you'd like for a lot. Well, that's not true. When it's a subdivision, it's lotted out. You can buy multiple lots, but you can't start changing the subdivision itself. So then we met and we started discussing price, and we were at a resort. She came with her helper to the resort, and the longer we talked, the cheaper the lot got. And let me tell you, I've been around the block long enough to know that if you keep dropping the price of the lot 100 square meters at a clip, it's not because I've got the greatest negotiating skills on earth. So that was a second red flag.
Yeah.
Well, then we get to this attorney that supposedly is the owner of the property. Well, I read the contract, and I was there with my wife's uncle, which is familiar with this attorney, and he said you can trust him. So I trusted him at that point because of B-Boy. Well, then I've looked at a lot of contracts in my life. I've been self-employed my entire life. And this particular property, you were buying a portion of 1,288 square meters that was supposedly clear title by special judicial court assignment. A portion of the 1,288 square meters of your 1,200 square meters, which was all CLOA land. It made absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, and multiple layered, and here's what my attorney told me. He said, Rick, that young man that's doing that, he said, I guarantee you, he has no license to do it. What he's doing is illegal, and what's going to happen is he's going to sell every lot. And as soon as he gets all the lots sold, he will disappear. It will never be put into his name. He'll never have it subdivided. And a year later, because on January of 2022, that's when he was supposed to put the road in, put the community water, We went back January of 2023, just happened to be in that area, and decided to go by. And guess what had been done at that point? Roy.
Nothing.
Flags were gone. There had been absolutely nothing done. And I guarantee you at that point, he only had 4 or 5 lots unsold. And that's exactly what it is. And he said that guy will get away with it, and he'll just pick up and go to another location, do the same thing. And he said they just do it, and they just don't ever get, they never get caught. They never get, punished or anything. So there's a lot of incentive to do these kinds of things to people. And they really don't have a lot of regret about, seem to have a lot of regret. It's just almost like being a thief. I want to say this, guys. We're really not trying to discourage you, because my story goes on. We found a beautiful piece of property that took a lot of imagination to see it where it is now. Literally within 4 weeks,
Nice.
Jen had legal title to this property, and we were able to start getting permits. And of course, if people have been watching my channel, they know kind of the issue I had with my builder, who's from Bataan.
Hey
We-
guys, just wanted to real quick thank all of you for being a part of our channel, and we hope you like the real estate series that we've done. This, of course, is the second part of a three-part series, so we've got one more coming out after this. Encourage you to watch all of them because there's a lot of really good information. The gentleman that's with me in the videos, Roy, be sure and check out his channel, Married to a Filipina. He's got some additional videos about real estate that he's dealt with, and we're going to do another collaboration in the future. So I encourage you to go check out his channel. If you haven't already liked and subscribed to ours, I always forget to say that, but I need to. So if you haven't already subscribed, please take a minute just to hit that subscribe button. If you like what you see, hit like. It helps us out in the long run, and we just really appreciate it. The good, the bad, the Philippines.